the one place I thought I'd never run into you. Who'd you piss off this time?
Another admiral.
You have 3 weeks to teach them how to fight as a team and how to come home.
Whoa! Those are your pilots.
Smoke in the air! Smoke in the air!
You know what happens if you go through with this.
I know what happens to everyone if I don't.
Come on!
Top Gun Maverick, rated PG-13, streaming December 22nd on Paramount+.
4 straight sellouts. 3 division championships.
Lethal left uppercut!
The one and only Gervonta Tank Davis puts his perfect record on the line against one of the fastest rising boxers in the sport. Unbeaten Hector Luis Garcia, plus knockout artist Jaron Boots Ennis. Tank Davis versus Hector Luis Garcia, Saturday, January 7th, live on pay-per-view.
Welcome to Las Vegas, the fight capital of the world. We're going to start things off with Vincent Astrolabio taking on Nikolai Potapov.
I'm going to make the most of this opportunity and show everybody that I'm one of the best bantamweights in the world.
I have to do this for my country. Knockout.
We get to the co-main, José Uzcátegui taking on the unbeaten Vladimir Shishkin.
I came here to do my work. Everything is on the line, and that's why it's everything or nothing.
I'm ready for 12 rounds, but
don't think it will be 12. And this dynamite main event has major implications.
You got 2 undefeated fighters that's, super hungry.
For me, it's the best matchup of the year.
Michel Rivera, the reincarnation of Muhammad Ali, as he calls himself.
He's a good guy, swing guy. I know that he's confident, but I'm more confident.
Frank Martin, the GOAT.
I know I'm going to come out with the W because all of the overtime I put in. I just can't wait to get in there and just dominate.
Saturday, everybody will see new superstar in the ring.
Slippers count, so protect yourself at all times.
I will win this fight, definitely.
At this time, we're ready to bring our fighters to the stage. Frank the Ghost Martin, 134 3/4 pounds. And now his opponent, Michel Ali Rivera, 134.5 pounds.
We're going to see who hit the hardest.
I will win this fight.
For the final time in 2022, the eyes of the boxing world will be on the fight capital of Las Vegas. Tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, Showtime Championship Boxing is back at it. Let's set the stage for what should be an interesting night ahead of tonight's triple header. Welcome into the Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown Show. My name is Brian Campbell, joined, of course, by my partner in crime on the 3 times a week award-winning Combat Sports Showtime Digital Series Morning Combat. That's Luke Thomas. And Luke, we get together tonight to set the stage, call some fights, and get all kinds of fired up for tonight's main event, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 in the West, when a pair of unbeaten lightweights get together. Somebody's as they like to say, has got to go when 27-year-old Frank Martin steps up to his highest level to date when he welcomes fellow unbeaten and 24-year-old Michel Rivera. Luke Thomas, let's just be honest. It's a gift in these parts when you get 2 young prospects on the verge of bursting through your television screen. And oh, by the way, they're willing to fight each other to get there.
Yeah, that's right. We have 2 fighters in the main event tonight, both in their 20s. And as BC indicated, both undefeated, Southpaw versus Orthodox. But more than that, BC, I think why the eyes of the boxing world are descending on Las Vegas tonight around this main event is there's so much hype because not just the youth, not just the records, so much skill between them. You have 2 very technical fighters. Frank Martin, probably the more of the powerhouse of the 2, but he can fight defensively very well. And obviously his record speaks for what kind of a KO artist he is. But Michel Rivera, obviously much more experienced, and what a jab that he has. This is going to be, by the way, not just a fun one, BC, I think a highly unpredictable one. Not many people have a very sure claim about what's going to happen in tonight's main event.
When we're talking about the betting odds, when we're talking about the opinions of the media members and those on the more hardcore side of boxing, this has been a gift that they're waiting on, and it's a virtual pick'em, a stocking stuffer of sorts as we close in on the holiday season. So a happy holidays out to all of you. Thank you for joining us right here. Triple header tonight, but we've got 2 interesting fights coming shortly from the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas. we will open things with an 8-round middleweight bout as Elijah Garcia takes on Cruz Stewart. As two young fighters look to take the next step forward in their career. And our featured bout in the super lightweight division, we're going 10 rounds. Omar Juarez takes on Austin Dulay. And Luke, I got to be honest, I love these early sort of prelim fights. It allows a fighter looking to bounce back, or in this case, two fighters on the rise as we open round one here in our early action. It's Elijah Garcia versus Cruz Stewart, and both looking to make a statement.
Yeah, no doubt about it. By the way, Elijah Garcia, a guy who turned pro at the age of, I believe, 16, did so in Mexico. Obviously, that's the only place he could really do that. The United States, in most cases, would not allow something like that. And to get experience early, and has looked tremendous. Obviously, 10 KOs through 12 fights, retiring a lot of these guys in between rounds, or certainly in the middle of them. A crafty southpaw, as you can see already, and he'll take his time early. The tape shows that he'll sort of, feel things out for the first round or two, but by round 3, that's when he really begins to ratchet it up.
This bout, a 8-round contest, a contracted weight of 165 pounds for these pair of middleweights. Both came in under the agreed-upon limit. As we see that southpaw orthodox conflict, Luke, that typically can be a battle of footwork, but sometimes we can see a head clash, an errant one here and there, as these two look to navigate each other's style.
Yeah, Garcia, I got to say it's a bad sign for Stewart, who, by the way, I mean, we're very early into the first round, but a guy like Garcia, the tape is pretty clear. He loves to pressure. Again, typically a little bit later, but if you already see Stewart with his back along the ropes, not necessarily the best sign going forward.
Elijah Garcia in the red trunks, the southpaw, just 19 years old, out of the greater Phoenix, Arizona area. The 6-footer, active early with the jab. 12-0 with 10 finishes is Elijah Garcia entering this contest. His opponent, Cruz Stewart, 8-1 with 6 knockouts, but both letting their hands go in the early going.
Elijah Garcia, by the way, it should be noted, really, again, sometimes obviously will stick behind the jab. As a clever southpaw, will sometimes go to the body and then mix up levels. He has very good shot selection, but really doesn't mind standing in the pocket either if he has to. Toe-to-toe, phone booth fighting, he's game for it.
Garcia showing that dog in him early on as he mixes it up with Stewart, who's the veteran here at age 33, but has 3 less pro bouts than the 19-year-old Garcia, as Cruz Stewart turned pro in 2018. Was fought just 9 times over the last 4 years. Native of Rock Island, Illinois. He fights out of the Minneapolis area today. He's known as the Hitman in the silver trunks, Cruz Stewart.
Boy, not much of a feeling out period, huh, BC? Getting right to it.
Round 1 in the books between these middleweights. But Luke, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a Hall of Famer, the third man in the ring. It's Robert Byrd, and tonight, for the resident of Las Vegas, it's a big one. The final night, and really, to be fair, the legendary career for the referee began officiating under the tutelage of fellow Hall of Famer Richard Steele. We've seen him on so many big bouts throughout the years. Mayweather-McGregor might be the highest level we've seen Robert Byrd go to, but if I have to give a reputation to a noted referee like Robert Byrd, to steal Joe Cortez's famous catchphrase, he is firm but very fair, one of the most respected names in the game. And Luke Thomas, when you hear Robert Byrd, you know you're in good hands in a big-time fight.
Yeah, this is not a guy who is unaccustomed to unusual situations. He understands what to look for when a fighter is in trouble. Has dealt with any number of bizarre or any other kind of situation that a boxing match would throw at him, and certainly more often than not has handled it with professionalism and class.
Robert Byrd began his career in 1981, over 100 championship fights. First world title bout, Rocky Lockridge versus Tony Lopez. And tonight will be the final night for him in his home state here of Nevada. But round 2 between middleweights, and it's the southpaw in the red trunks, Elijah Garcia, very active. Stewart meeting him. Look, the infighting between them, you mentioned it. They're coming out. No stones left unturned here. 8 rounds to work with, and both fighters going after it.
Yeah, what's interesting is Garcia is starting the round with a little bit of distance. You saw him in just a minute ago double jab his way inside. But then after about a minute or so, he gets right to this distance and this range. Which, by the way, I have to say, it looks like the fight is a little bit more even here. Or at least they're trading more, obviously, and so Garcia's getting hit. I actually feel like he does pretty well at his own range rather than the phone booth, but he's going to elect to fight the way he wants.
Stewart doing well to meet his aggression of Garcia in the middle as they trade. Sacrificing a bit of technique here for entertainment, and down goes Stewart in round one on a left cross from Elijah Garcia.
What a nice shot. He had him turning at angles and found the left over the top. It actually sat him down. This fight, yep, this one might be, that's it.
A second round stoppage for the 19-year-old Elijah Garcia, who improves to 13-0 with 11 KOs. Luke Thomas, his opponent Cruz Stewart, willing to mix it up, but it only took one clean, hard shot from Elijah Garcia, and referee, the Hall of Famer Robert Byrd, has seen enough.
By the way, he's so good, Garcia. Let's take a look at the replay here. Right hook lands, he pushes him off, and then he runs into the left. And there's another one. He just set him up cleanly. BC, you saw it so often. He would push off with that lead elbow right there, and that gave him the opportunity to fire these shots that landed the particular, the left right there. Great job in initiating the clinch break and then finding the offense right behind it.
That he just needed one punch to finish him, but you saw the effects of the combination that set that up, especially that short right hand early that turned the chin of Stewart and put him in a position to be finished. And credit to the 19-year-old from Phoenix, Arizona, Elijah Garcia, stepping up to the Showtime Championship Boxing countdown level here and delivering a second round finish.
Yeah, remarkable job by a guy this young. Again, I never really know how to feel when fighters start their pro careers as very youthful teenagers in Mexico, but obviously we know situations, for example, like Devin Haney, he did it, and not everyone's going to be Devin Haney, but certainly you can't really argue that was necessarily detrimental to his progress, right? So obviously Garcia at 19 years old, he has plenty of time to develop and plenty of time to get better, but I will say, so far, so good. Maybe accepts a little bit more damage than he needs to, but you can see he's a technician. He understands his ranges. He understands his shot selection, and he dispatched Cruz Stewart here tonight with relative ease.
It was a short turnaround for young Elijah Garcia, who had stopped Edgar Valenzuela in the first round on October 8th, so just over 2 months. Back at it, improves to 13-0, as I mentioned, 11 KOs. A good-looking young prospect. I think it's fair to mention what you did, Luke. This does welcome damage. Wants to fight on the inside, wants to let his hands go, but a beautiful combination once he found Cruz Stewart there to be hit, and he took care of the action. Took care of the opponent on top of that.
So that means now 11 KOs in 13 fights. 19-year-old can thump a little bit, huh?
Goes by the nickname El Rempang, excuse me on my Spanish pronunciation. El Relampagno, Luke. Is that the lightning? Did I get that right as much as I butchered the...
Actually, you butchered it so much, I'm not sure what you said.
Exactly. The lightning delivers. It strikes. It hits. Good-looking victory for young Elijah Lorenzo Garcia. His fourth appearance, of 2022.
One of boxing's finest.
And Luke Thomas, one fight in the books on our preliminary action. And just a few minutes, we'll hit to our featured bout of the evening on our Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown show. As mentioned, it comes in that super lightweight division, a 10-round bout, as Omar Juarez welcomes Austin Dulay. But Luke, less than 2 hours to go before the start of tonight's main offering on Showtime, 10 p.m. in the East, 7 p.m. Pacific. Michel Rivera versus Frank Martin, a pair of unbeaten lightweights. And as we talked about off the top, such a delightful, I think is the word, whether that fits or not, I'd like to use in the intention of both fighters to match themselves so tough in terms of what this fight means. It's a title eliminator of the WBA. the winner catapults themselves into title contention in an already deep division filled with so much young talent. But we love the contrast that goes beyond just righty versus southpaw. How do you look at how these two match up against one another this evening?
This is an incredible, really just a phenomenal matchup. In terms of how they match up, there's a few things to watch. I think that Frank Martin, in certain eyes, by certain estimations, folks think he's really a great defensive technician, which I would agree with. But I got to tell you, I think and Rivera, by the way, has tasted the canvas before. That has actually happened to him, although he rallied in that fight. Obviously, both of them are undefeated. But I guess what I would say is the thing that I'm looking to see how much it plays a role here, Frank Martin is a jackhammer. I mean, when he gets rolling downhill, he just cannot be stopped. Tremendous body punching in the Romero-Duneau fight. The pull-2 counters he was landing, where he actually stopped him in the 4th round. He is so accurate, so crisp. He takes his time. He makes good decisions. Both guys keep their balance under him. And again, I'm going to go back to it. The jab of Rivera seems to me like a very decisive factor here. Either that will be something for him he can really pump both in terms of volume and to set up the rest of his offense, as well as shut down what Martin is doing, or it won't, obviously by virtue of what Martin does. But I'm going to say it one more time. The X factor for me here is the punishing ability of Frank Martin. Frank Martin can crack. He can find excellent opportunities to land, obviously between punches, on the half beat, and it's just a devastating kind of, he's not a brawler, BC. He's absolutely no way should he be considered that kind of thing. But he's got, and I know that the comparisons are going to be there because of Errol Spence, obviously in the same stable, but he's got a little bit of that Errol Spence driving through you pressure, where it is coordinated, it is calculated. But you look at the eye of Ugas after he fought Spence, it was just a complete, it was turned into hamburger. Frank Martin's got a lot of that spirit in him. He's going to be calculated, he's going to be clever, but he's a dog, and he really, really goes in there to punish these guys. Can Rivera, who has rallied at previous times when he's been either down on the cards or otherwise hurt, he's faced big punchers in the past, by the way, which should be noted too, but can he really get through the technical brutality of a guy like Frank Martin? That's what I'm going to be paying attention to here tonight.
Both undefeated, young, well-rounded fighters. I think you can call both boxer punchers, but if we are, as you did right there, separating the differences between them, boxer puncher more heavy on the boxer for Michel Rivera, the 24-year-old from the Dominican Republic who fights out of Miami today. He may have a slight edge in overall experience up to this point comparative to Martin, giving Joseph Adorno, handing him his first loss with a clinical boxing performance over the distance. But on that flip side that you mentioned, look, Frank Martin can do it all. But his long-term upside, that plus part of his game that jumps through your screen, is certainly the ability to break opponents down, darting in and out with that southpaw stance, going hard to the body. You have to give credit on what happens when, as they like to say, iron sharpens iron. In camp in Dallas under head coach Derek James, who, to be fair, in the conversation, not just for trainer of the year, but for sort of the mythical label of best trainer in the game today, considering he's got the undisputed junior middleweight champion in Jermell Charlo. He's got the aforementioned Errol Spence Jr., who's hoping in 2023 he can become the undisputed welterweight champion. To see Derek James put that same type of interest and time into a rising gun in Frank Martin, the future could be very bright for him, just as it has looked each step of the way for Michel Rivera. So I think the wild card of the two, Luke, has to be Martin, because as it's rare to have a 27-year-old you're calling a prospect who you're looking to see if he can make that leap. He didn't pick up this sport until he was 18 years old, and that's such a rare commodity. We usually put a lot of attention on that when we see Sergio Martinez, Deontay Wilder, fighters like that who similarly did not come to this game until basically they were already an adult. The advancements Frank Martin has made in short time, becoming a top amateur before turning pro, and now, as you mentioned, showing some of those signs of that ability of what Errol Spence can do. This is such a tough contest for both, and you hope this becomes the norm to see two young fighters on the way up just stop and say, look, I can't get exactly the fighters in the ring I'm trying to, so why don't we look across at each other and find out right now who's going forward, who's taking a step back. You have to love that intentionality of both. But can Michel Rivera, who, Luke, if we're going to talk about his greatest strengths, his ability to maintain distance, work behind that jab, find a home for his right hand, it's not only the perfect contrast to what the more rugged and aggressive Martin can do from the southpaw stance, But if there's any holes in Martin's game at times, it's his ability to welcome that danger when trying to close in that distance. This is going to be up to Michel Rivera's accurate right hand to discipline Frank Martin throughout.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That jab is really just the key to everything. And by the way, it should be noted too, there is one other difference between them, not so much just in styles, but in experience. Obviously, Rivera has a little bit more, but more than that, BC, I would argue a little bit more battle-tested. Just a little bit more battle-tested. Again, being put down on the canvas and having to rally, having faced big punchers, he's faced a ton of southpaws. Most of them were in 2017, but he does have some experience. But he's seen just a little bit more. And you can go back, by the way, I would even argue to the Adorno fight, right? That was like a thinking man's game where both guys were trying to figure out sort of clever ways to get around the other one. And obviously Rivera was the one that got his hand raised, but he's a little bit more, he's been through the meat grinder a little bit more and came out the other side as the victor, obviously, all the times he's been in a professional contest. But the crucible that he's been through, in my mind, has tested the fuller breadth and depth of his game, again, relatively speaking, to Frank Martin, who has not had some like easy walk through the park, but not quite that same level of difficulty, I think, in terms of what it did in testing him and him having to overcome the adversity. Also, another point you raised previously, the guy didn't take up boxing until he was 18. He was playing football and he was wrestling, not professional wrestling, but the amateur kind, up until that point, turned pro 4 years later. This is my point. Obviously, I think in the WBA rankings, I think Rivera is 3 and Martin sits at 10. So he's a little bit further along, obviously, in his own journey as a prospect. But the thing that stands out to me is if Frank Martin's only been a pro 5 years, his aptitude for the game is ridiculous. You just don't see a lot of athletes who pick it up that late and in a course of a 5-year pro career look as technically smooth. And again, I'm going to go back to it, brutal with his just overwhelming firepower, certainly at times, like a guy like Martin. That is very, very rare. You see it, for example, at like heavyweight. Deontay Wilder didn't pick it up so much later in life or something like that. But that's a relatively thin division compared to 135 pounds. So for Frank Martin to be this good in this short amount of time, yeah, time isn't necessarily on his side as a 27-year-old, but boy, is he making the most of it. You can't say otherwise.
Yeah, each time Frank Martin has stepped up his level of class. You mentioned the Romero-Duno win, which is the 4th-round stoppage. He's looked spectacular. In July of this calendar year, the biggest win to date for Martin was that 10th-round stoppage of Jackson Marinez, a skilled boxer who's been at this level before. We remember his disputed loss to Rolly Romero. But look, if we're looking for a opponent that they both shared as somewhat of a litmus test, let's go to Jerry Perez. Frank Martin stopped Perez in 2021 in the 7th round. That's the same opponent who Michel Rivera faced in his most recent contest, going the 8-round distance in October. So only so much we can learn from that, but it shows you 2 different fighters, 2 different styles, 2 different roads to get here. But as much as Rivera, more established, maybe more battle-tested, we do still need to see from him that extra gear that can only, be activated when it needs to, when challenged in this type of contest. Can Michel Rivera be even better than we've seen? We know the teases that Frank Martin gives us as a potential true problem, a contender, a guy who goes after it. Michel Rivera has looked smooth and has largely stayed in control for the majority of his fights. Point blank, Luke, does he have that extra gear that he may need to show us tonight when things get hairy?
I think he does. I absolutely think that he does. Now, again, Frank Martin is a special case, a special fighter. This is a very special night. But in talking about the larger perspective, the totality of Rivera's career, again, he has faced guys with great records, dominant punchers, John Fernandez, Jose Matias Romero, as we mentioned before, Joseph Adorno, and then, of course, they had the common opponent in Jerry Perez. This is a guy who, if you go back through some of those names, these were heavy hitters. These were guys who could really put pressure on him if they wanted to, where he had to be careful. He had to be slick. And again, he was dropped, I think, in the Ladarius Miller fight, if memory serves, or certainly one around that time, and had to get up off the canvas and then rescue himself. And he did. Those are the teams in sports, or the fighters in combat sports, the ones who can get down but not out, the ones who can rally, the ones who can not necessarily be flawless all the time, although Rivera is slick, to be very clear about it, but the guys who know what it's like when the chips are stacked against them, when they're down, and then they have to raise their game to answer the call, and they're actually able to do that. That's not an automatic skill, even if sometimes you are better than the opponent. It can rattle guys, especially more youthful guys who aren't used to being in those positions. And if there's anything about Rivera, being rattled is not one of them, ladies and gentlemen. This guy is cool, calculated, and super confident, and he has every reason to be a very, I won't say totally complete boxer, because nobody is, but a very well-rounded one, and a guy who knows how to, by the way, dictate pace. We haven't talked about that. He has ways in which he can raise the volume and then lower it as well to lower the output of another opponent, so that can be more fortuitous for his chances. He can take command of a fight by the scruff of the neck, not just by being willful and trying to be daring. No, by being smart and clever and making good decisions. In both cases here, and certainly in the case of Rivera, high fight IQ between these two fighters.
Yeah, Rivera with that doesn't hide his fandom for the late great Muhammad Ali. Often tries to dress like a young Cassius Clay with his haircut and his trunks. We'll see more of that tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern. Showtime Championship Boxing kicks off its triple header. But let's go back to the ring from the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. It's our featured bout on the Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown Show. It's in the super lightweight division, 10 rounds. Omar Juarez taking on the southpaw Austin Dulay. Luke, this was contracted weight of 141 pounds. See who gets the edge early in this contrast of styles.
As again, standard disclaimer, folks, you got a southpaw versus an orthodox, so pay attention to lead foot positioning. It does not necessarily need to be on the outside, but it often is. And obviously, unfortunately, pay attention to any potential head clashes common in this kind of a matchup.
Juarez in the red gloves, Dulay in the black gloves. In Nevada tonight, only the referee can stop the fight. A fighter cannot be saved by the bell. And this fight will be official after the completion of the fourth round. Omar Juarez, just 23 years old, from Brownsville, Texas.
Yeah, unlike the last fight, definitely a little bit more feeling out at range here. Both guys trying to stay just outside of the other one. They're trying to figure out how far they need to be for their own distance. You see some foot feints there from Juarez. In the last fight from Garcia, again, 19-year-old kid, you have to be forgiving. By the way, this is great pressure here from Juarez, but there wasn't a lot of feinting or faking to set up shots already from Juarez. You're seeing that now.
Juarez has been a pro for 3 years. Scored a split decision victory in February of this calendar year against Cowboy Ryan Carl. His only defeat came in June of 2021, a disputed majority decision loss to Ali Rivera, and what can be best described as a thriller between those young fighters.
You see, one thing I'm noticing right away from Juarez, even when he's not throwing, he's showing the same setup look for different punches, right? So he'll lean, for example, over to his left, and that looks like maybe something he would do to throw a right to the body, and instead he'll come over a bit with an up jab or some other kind of shot. So what he's doing is he's laying the groundwork for subsequent rounds, subsequent engagements, where he'll show a look to Dulay, but Dulay will, over time, Juarez has his way, be unable to tell what's coming behind it. That's smart investment as the fight goes forward.
Both fighters willing to exchange early. Dulay, 27 years old. He hails from Nashville, Tennessee. Nicknamed the Dream.
Nice little left hook to the body there from Juarez, too. Love that.
Juarez, a very confident young fighter. Good head on his shoulders, too. He's done a lot of work in his community as a motivational speaker. 1 round in the books here in our featured preliminary bout. Super lightweight division.
Just 1 round in the books, BC. But what I would say is in that first round already you have Dulay waiting on Juarez, but not like in the way where he's sort of counterfighting with intentionality. Waiting in the sense that he's a little bit unsure, I think, of what to expect. And you saw a little bit of flowing there, just at the end. A little bit of flowing there from Juarez, who looks to be very comfortable early on.
Dulay comes in with a record of 15-3 with 11 stoppages. The only defeats have come when stepping up in competition. You'll recognize some names on his ledger. He's lost to Jose Valenzuela, Diego Magdaleno, Chris Colbert. Of course, Luke, it was in this same ring that we saw the big-time upset earlier this year. The last time Showtime Championship Boxing was at the Cosmopolitan, when Chris Colbert took the upset loss to Hector Garcia, who, of course, we will see advancing on from that to take on one Gervonta Tank Davis, January 7th, Showtime pay-per-view in your city, the nation's capital, Washington.
Yeah, this is the biggest fight in that city, and it's city limits anyway, not the larger area, since Amir Khan versus Lamont Peterson. Really, really great return of boxing to the nation's capital, and the biggest fight in that venue, which has a different name, it was the MCI Center at the time. But that was where Mike Tyson ended his pro career. It'll be good to see Tank Davis bring some new, excellent boxing to that venue.
Yeah, good synergy there as Mike Tyson's loss to Kevin McBride, a Showtime pay-per-view way back in, I believe, 2005. But round two here, good body work so far from Juarez. Look at that right uppercut downstairs.
You see how Dulay is just a little bit waiting around and not exactly throwing? The feints and then the different guard he's showing and what shots he puts behind the different guards, I think is already giving Dulay a little bit of something to think about.
Good counter left hand from Dulay. Juarez continues to be the aggressor here, putting on the pressure. I mentioned early the motivational speaking background of Omar Juarez. He's received commendations from the Texas State Senate and the Texas House of Representatives for his altruism.
Not a lot of altruism in this one. But still a pretty tactical affair thus far. Nice sort of right stabbing there. Stabbing shot from Juarez. Again, look at how he never kind of stays still. He's always changing his guard. He'll go high guard, then he'll hang his left low. He'll usually use that to stab right there in the middle, although they're calling that a low shot, it looks like. But he's giving a lot of different looks from a lot of different guards. It'll be interesting to see how he builds on that as the fight continues.
Referee Michael Ortega halting the action as Dulay was hit below the belt, warning Omar Juarez. Ortega, like his father, members of the Connecticut Boxing Hall of Fame. And a good counter, left hand to the body. Down goes Austin Dulay.
BC, we saw that left to the body previously several times already. Is he saying it's a low blow?
It looks like referee Michael Ortega is going to rule that low. We'll have to see the replay to be sure, and this will be a point deducted from Omar Juarez, the second low blow in this second round. As Dulay gets extra time to recover. But Luke, we're talking about a 1 point deduction here that could potentially play a factor depending on how the rest of this fight goes.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, obviously, for Juarez. Now, it is a 10-round contest, so it may not. It's not like it's, 4 or 6 or even 8. Still, it could prove decisive depending on how this fight plays out.
Point deduction hasn't stopped Juarez from targeting that body as he's mixing shots high and low. Good combination punching.
And he's overwhelming Dulay's position. Oh, brutal shot to the body, and that one looked legit to me.
Left hand to the body, and once again, that will be ruled a low blow as Ortega calls timeout again.
I would love to see the replay on some of these. They're going to take another point.
Point deducted from Omar Juarez in this second round. 3 times he has been docked for hitting Dulay below the belt. You'd have to believe one more time it would be a disqualification. The punches look close. We'll have to see the replay after the conclusion of this round to see for sure, but Michael Ortega ruling 3 separate times and 2 points deducted after Omar Juarez goes low again.
All right, 1 point is not great. 2 points could definitely prove decisive, and as you indicated, If this is not a problem he cleans up immediately, the fight may not even make it to the judges by virtue of the fact that this whole thing could be a disqualification.
All right, let's take a second look at these body shots that were ultimately ruled low. There's the first knockdown. On the belt line, at least. It was the first knockdown, but the second low blow of the round. And here's the third, a left uppercut to the body. Michael Ortega right on top of it, Luke. That looked low upon second look. Ortega,
yeah, upon second review, and I apologize for not being able to recognize it as fast as possible in the live broadcast, but upon review, they looked a little low. There was one of them that was belt line-ish that maybe could have been forgiven, but certainly that last one there was too low. And if you've already been warned and you've already had a point taken, you've got to exercise some discipline about shot location.
We're really going to have to see what Omar Juarez is made of here, because the pressure is going to be on. Will he continue to target the body, knowing that one more errant shot could cost him the fight? And what kind of opening could this mean for Austin Dulay, who probably was looking to be on the way to losing a 10-9 round, and now gets 2 points taken away from his opponent?
And if he, I wasn't judging the round in real time, BC, so maybe Juarez was the one who was winning it, but certainly if he didn't even win the round and had the 2 points deducted, that is a deep, deep hole to try to get oneself out of.
Most likely will go down as a 9-8 round in the favor of Dulay, if you consider that Juarez seemed to get the better of the punching between the two, but was docked those 2 points. Does seem like Dulay is sensing the urgency here in his favor, the points going against Juarez. Can Dulay use this as motivation to get back into this fight?
What you'll notice relative to the last contest is anytime you have a southpaw versus orthodox, there's always a battle between the lead hands, but typically these guys are standing far enough away, you're not seeing one try to, example, for parry the other one's lead hand and then go. You're not seeing any hand traps or pins, the kinds of things that, are typically something you'll see when you have opposite stance fighters. These guys aren't really doing a lot of lead hand battling.
The aggressiveness and punch output of Omar Juarez has certainly gone down to start this third round. Counter left hand from Dulay. There's a Juarez digging back into the body.
And that's a nice shot for him, right? Like, he can do that when you can see he'll throw the two several times, and then when he's able to close distance off of it, he can drill that left to the body.
Like a right uppercut from Juarez hit the mark on Dulay. Production may be down, but Juarez looks like he's continuing to control the action in this round. Juarez jabs from distance. You're certainly not seeing the aggressiveness that he showed the first two rounds with the multiple combination punches, the swarms to the body. Gonna have to toe an interesting line here as we near the final 15 seconds of round three.
He hasn't fully been able to weaponize it yet, but you'll notice that Juarez is the one whose angle changing is forcing Dulay to move, not the other way around. I'll say this, BC.
Complete.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, BC. I'll say this. For a guy who got 2 points taken away, he only went to the body once, it looked like, or once with some pop, but it was a good shot, and he didn't look too rattled or too nervous about what he could do in this round. It was a good comeback round, so to speak, for Juarez.
3 rounds through this 10-round featured super lightweight bout here on the Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown Show, all leading up to the start of tonight's main card, 10 p.m. Eastern from the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas, and only on Showtime. We're in the main event, of course, lightweights. Michel Rivera and Frank Martin will put their unbeaten records on the line. If you're looking to see tonight's action and you don't have Showtime, now would be the right time to start your free trial by going to Showtime.com. Get 1 month for free. If you like what you see, an additional 6 months at $3.99 per month. is available to first-time subscribers as we enter the start of round 4. Luke, it seems to be a distinct technical difference between them with the more decorated Omar Juarez so far, but with this 2-round point deduction, what would you like to see out of Dulay to try to take advantage of the scoring moving forward?
I think, well, you'll notice, by the way, Dulay changing up his rhythm a little bit. He was kind of bouncing and trying to move in and out, and now he's flat-footed. I would tend to think that the range isn't so much the issue. Getting off the ropes, you have got to find a way to land on Juarez to back him up a little bit. If he's constantly the one circling on the outside and just constantly reacting to everything Juarez is doing, that's a hard way to win the fight, right? You've got to set the tone a little bit, maybe behind his own jab, maybe forcing his way inside that way, but just orbiting on the outside of whatever Juarez is doing. Yes, some of the counterpunching is getting through, and of course we had the 2-point deduction in round 2, but I think that that's just maybe not going to be enough over the long stretch of this fight, if in fact it goes the full 10.
Yeah, Dulay has largely used his jab when he has used it as a rangefinder, which isn't unnatural between righty and lefty, where often the jabs can cancel each other out, but needs to be throwing his left hand more often than just one at a time, as you see he lands with a left cross.
And also, it looks to me like for the most part, Juarez is the one doing the real faking and feinting, showing the different looks. He'll go high guard. There he is. He faked a double jab on to get around the guard. Then he goes to the 2. He goes back high guard and resets. He's giving Dulay something to think about. Well, that's what Dulay's got to do. He's got to give Juarez something to think about other than just sort of pot-shotting on some of the combination punching that may or may not land from Juarez. You see Dulay just waiting around. Just waiting.
Backs Dulay up to the ropes again. Dulay, as I mentioned, fights out of Nashville, Tennessee. We've seen a recent uptick of some sorts of boxing activity from the larger area when you consider super middleweight title contender and former champion Caleb Plant. We've also seen another young fighter, Tyler Tomlin, recently make his SHOBox the New Generation debut. Both of those fighters from Ashland City, not far, of course, from Nashville.
BC, also, there's a footwork difference between them. Look at how well, and oh, he's going to claim that's low.
A punch drops Dulay, and Ortega will call timeout again. Is this another low blow, and could this mean the end of this contest?
Again, I need to see the replay on that. He was doing well. Wow.
And Michael Ortega, the referee, will dock a point from Omar Juarez for the 3rd time in this bout. Seems Ortega is handing out the type of final warnings which might mean a disqualification is next. But Luke, we're seeing Ortega giving Juarez at least one more chance here. How many times have you seen 3-point deductions in the same fight, all on low blows, and a fighter allowed to continue?
I think what calculation the referee is making is that I don't know that. Look at his left hook misses. He resets with the jab. The right lands. He's already set up for the left hook. There it is. It's a little low. It's a little low. It's not crazy low, but it's low. The reason why I don't think he has been fully disqualified yet is because it seems that, like, Juarez, after you have this many, who knows what is and isn't intentional. But Juarez looks to be the better fighter. He doesn't look like he's trying to cheat his way out of being overmatched, which sometimes happens when you get a lot of fouls and a lot of rule breaking in a bout. It's when someone is looking for a way out when things aren't going their way. Juarez is the one that's, for the most part, when he's not landing the low blows, doing the better work. But man, his shot placement, not great tonight. Not great.
Well, referee Michael Ortega showing at least a level of understanding, if not, I guess, compassion for the fact that Juarez is not being intentionally dirty. But Luke, when we talk about a 10-round bout here in this featured super lightweight contest, Omar Juarez doing the better work overall in terms of what our eyes are telling us. but 3 points in the hole as we close in on the midway point of this round. Of this fight, excuse me.
And it'll be really interesting to see what he throws. Like, he had that left to the body set up perfectly off the 2, and he was all there to throw. And right there again, that's the exact same punch off the exact same setup I was just talking about. That one was better landed, but you can see, BC, it's a key portion of his game.
Juarez continues to be the aggressor. I don't know, at this point, 3 points in the hole, you may want to become a headhunter. You may want to live and die behind that big jab, but Juarez continuing to mix up shots downstairs.
Good jab there from Dulay. It doesn't keep Juarez off of him. I was going to say, in addition to some of the shots here, you see Dulay getting out, but in general, Juarez is showing pretty good ring generalship in keeping Dulay cornered, and when he is against the ropes, really holding him there to do effective combination punching.
Juarez, just 23 years old, the native of Brownsville, Texas. Left to do his best to work his way out of this three-point hole. He has seemed to get the majority of the edge in these rounds. But here we are in round 5, and a right hand hurts Austin Dulay. Juarez continues to pour out power punches along the ropes.
The body punching is part and parcel of the overall Juarez offense. He's just got to be a little bit more careful, and this is his fight for the taking.
Clean jab from Juarez. Good right hand and another left hook downstairs. That one above the belt line. Juarez playing with fire anytime he's going to go near with a body shot.
What he might benefit from, BC, it depends on how he wants to throw. Obviously, you can't punch to the back, but he's trying to find a place underneath the elbow there of Dulay. He might be able to come a little bit more to the inside, or even potentially, instead of going to the body, over the top, now that he has gone to that left body so often, the left hook upstairs might be available to him.
Halfway through this super lightweight featured attraction, a unique set of circumstances, to say the least, when we're talking about 23-year-old Omar Juarez. Has seemed to control most, if not all, of the 5 rounds from the action we've seen inside the ring. But 3 separate point deductions on low blows is keeping Austin Dulay in this fight, at least potentially, from the idea of scoring. But Luke Dulay cannot land more than 1 punch at a time, and he seemed hurt as we look at the replay from round 5 after a series of clean right hands.
Yeah, almost punching the hip just to be safe, going nearly behind the elbow, and certainly a little bit underneath the elbow, and not trying to dig and stab under that, where they're obviously, it looks like what Juarez is trying to do is kind of stab that left just above the belt line. Obviously, he's looking for a liver and everything else there in between, but that particular placement. But if he doesn't get that one just right, so it looks like he's trying to go further outside in certain cases to keep himself safe.
Round 6 underway. This 141-pound contracted weight bout. Pair of super lightweights squaring off. Juarez tries to continue to put the only blemish on his pro career, that majority decision loss to Ali Rivera from 2021, in his rear view. It was a fun fight. It was a back-and-forth contest that seemingly could have gone either way, but here's Juarez putting the pressure on Austin Dulay once again.
Yeah, watch how often Juarez forces Dulay to leave his base. Right? If he has some kind of stance or structure in place to throw, Juarez overwhelms it and forces him to reset.
Juarez can't miss with that right hand, whether he's working it off the jab or using it as a lead punch, which can often be a weapon against southpaws.
And he's forcing Dulay to move into a subsequent series of punches. He's moving Dulay in certain ways to get him to go into even more shots.
Very good ring generalship here from Juarez. Clean punching. He's constantly cutting off the ring. Lead right hand once again. Good body shot from Juarez. Got to give the kid credit. The point deductions have not changed his style, his game plan, his intentions. You'd have to believe referee Michael Ortega is out of warnings, out of deductions at this point. Dulay is going to have to get off those ropes as each time Juarez backs him off, he's able to land with these combinations.
And at times he gets on the ropes and stays square. He doesn't do it for too long, but you don't need to. A second is an eternity in boxing. If he gets his both shoulder blades flat to the ropes like this, that's a problem.
Under a minute to go in round 6. Juarez putting on the pressure in the red gloves. 23-year-old. Good right hand again. 3, 4, 5 punch combination.
And BC now, it's been a part obviously since round 1, but now it's having much more of a pronounced effect. The uppercut, as you get Dulay leaning over like that, not just the stab to the body, but the uppercut has been a real key weapon here for Juarez as the rounds have progressed.
Juarez flirting with the southpaw stance briefly. When we're talking about power punches connected, this has been Juarez's game the last 2 rounds, continuing to apply this pressure. Good comeback combination attempt there from Dulay to keep Juarez honest. Round 6 complete.
Good round for Juarez. The kid can box. He looks to be the better of the two, whatever the scoring is going to be as the fight wears on.
We'll look back at some of the action here. Good combination punching, Dulay and landing the counter left hand, but each time Juarez was able to pin his opponent on the ropes, it felt a little bit like target practice.
And I love some of these uppercuts, BC. They're not necessarily trying to set the world on fire. Now, that right hand was. But look at some of these uppercuts. He'll double up on him from the same side just to change the rhythm of his punches. A touch, touch, go. Or a touch, touch to bring you up. And then he fires, obviously, the end of the combination in terms of both the speed and the intensity of the punching. I like how he's mixing it up. He goes soft, then he goes dramatic. He'll go slow, then he'll go fast. It's good work from Juarez.
Just 5 stoppages in 13 pro wins for Omar Juarez. But he doesn't fight like a fighter, who doesn't have impressive power punch numbers. He goes after it, cuts off the ring, and as we see the start of round 7. And like you mentioned, Luke, a lot of craft in how he sets up these power shots. Dulay, for the most part, has taken the clean shots well. Looked to be hurt at the end of round 5, but did recover.
Man, even if the right hand misses for Juarez, it doesn't matter. He'll just use the position it puts him in, even when it misses, to load up the left hook to the body.
Juarez lost 2 points in the second round. A 3rd point deducted in round 4. He's had 4 low shots overall, but as mentioned, Michael Ortega, the referee, giving him the benefit of the doubt in terms at least of his intention. That's allowed him to stay in this fight, which has largely become a one-sided affair.
Man, what a gift to delay those. I mean, obviously the punches didn't feel great, but in terms of how this could throw the fight on its head, or I should say turn the fight on its head, the 3-point deduction has very much kept his fortunes alive.
It's just a 10-round contest, but look, he's going to have to take advantage of that potential opportunity, which means letting his hands go. Busier this round is Austin Dulay than previously as he works off the jab.
Yeah, a little bit better there. Again, giving something to Juarez to think about, but Juarez still right on top of him, disrupting his base, disrupting his balance, forcing him to move, moving side to side. Again, you can see who's moving, who's not. Yeah, and there he is. He moves into the power of Juarez based on what previous ring generalship, angle changing, forces Dulay to move into.
Good right hands from Juarez. The constant pressure, the constant activity.
You see these uppercuts? We see each one is not that was a hard right hand, but each one is not designed to set the world on fire, just to set up subsequent combinations, subsequent punches, fake them out, anything other than just being power for power's sake.
Final 15 seconds of round 7. Omar Juarez in the red gloves continues to control on his terms, which has largely meant backing Austin Dulay up to the ropes and letting his hands go with clean combinations.
I still think that's a round for Juarez. I think overall he did the better work. Dulay had some moments for sure. Some of the jabs from him were getting through, but that looked to me like a Juarez round.
This super lightweight contest, our final featured prelim ahead of the start of tonight's main card, 10 p.m. Eastern on Showtime. It's Rivera versus Martin. There in the red gloves, that's Omar Juarez as we look back on the action last round.
By the way, Juarez, even when he gets hit sometimes, he does a pretty good job of rolling with the punch to diminish the impact, obviously. And here he is again, resetting range, framing, blinding Dulay. Good work.
Tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing triple header kicks off at 10 p.m. Eastern with an IBF bantamweight title eliminator as Vincent Astrolabio, a protege of Filipino legend Manny Pacquiao, takes on Nikolai Potapov. And in the co-feature, José Uzcátegui, the former super middleweight title holder, welcomes unbeaten Vladimir Shishkin, who Showbox the new generation fans know well. Very good step-up opportunity for Shishkin against the battle-tested Uzcátegui in this IBF title eliminator. Back to the action here, round 8. The 140-pound division. Omar Juarez in the red gloves, Austin Dulay in the black. But Dulay has just 3 rounds left.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just going to say I'm loving the, not just the jab placement, obviously, which is nice, but just great combination punching there. But the jab is originating from different places. Sometimes it'll come from Juarez's shoulder, and sometimes it'll come from his hip. He'll change the timing of it, right? So you can't quite get a beat on it. That's solid work there. And then, of course, once it lands, he'll put 2 and 3 of them together to close the distance to set up any kind of right hand or subsequent combination shots. There he is again moving Dulay backwards, and then this time, obviously, Dulay was able to get out, but typically into his other power.
The lead right hand for Juarez hits the mark. Good counter left hand from Austin Dulay. Just too little, really, overall, is the overall output of Austin Dulay. As there's 3 points to work with on the scorecards, but can't find consistency against Omar Juarez.
He threw that same left hook to the body, and you saw it bounce right off the elbow. The punch has, I won't say become totally ineffective, but not nearly as worthwhile for all the things the punch could do than it was before. Obviously, you know, under non-rule-breaking circumstances.
Under a minute to go in round 8. Been more of the same here as Juarez continues to take the lead, set the tone, work off his jab. We've seen a nice mix of lead right hands, clean body shots, combination punching, and amazingly not turned off by the 4 low blows Juarez has connected with and the 3 points deducted. He's still finding his spots with that left hook to the body.
That was a nice counter left there from Dulay. But he's just able to land so much more by virtue of getting in close, backing up Dulay against the ropes, throwing just a few sort of setup shots, changing the rhythm, changing the power, and then getting through with like stuff like that. It's just nice work.
There's the end of round 8 in this scheduled 10. All leading to the start of tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing main card at 10 p.m. Eastern when unbeaten lightweights Rivera, Martin touch gloves. That should be a good one. Here's some good two-way action between Juarez and Dulay to close round 8.
Yeah, Dulay had a couple of good jabs there and a good left, but over time, Juarez just finds Juarez is doing more to create opportunities. There are some good counterpunching work being done from Dulay, but just the overall amount of offense. Who's doing more work here offensively? Quite clearly is Juarez.
Tonight, the 23rd boxing show of the 2022 calendar year for Showtime. Across its 3 brands of Showtime Championship Boxing, Showtime Pay-Per-View, and a little vehicle I know a little thing about here, Showbox The New Generation. Excited to come back for a new season beginning in January. Round 9 here underway as Juarez in the red gloves continues to put on the pressure behind the jab. Luke, we've had the pleasure of calling a handful of good fights this year on the Countdown Show, whether it's former names like Andre Durrell making a comeback and getting a respectable and aggressive victory over Yunieski and Gonzalez, or whether it's been young prospects looking to get the attention of those who can place them on future Showtime Championship cards. Been a good run in 2022. Let's see if these 2 fighters, and of course the 6 on tonight's main card, can close out the calendar year with a bang.
Great right hands there. And a good angle change at the end from Juarez.
Pace slows just a bit. Dulay showed us a good chin. He's been game. He's just been unable, despite the point deductions in his favor, to turn that into offense, to turn that really into more than maybe one round here or there you could consider giving him. It has been all Omar Juarez from the action that's been legal, if we can say it that way. Luke, would
Juarez
you say
Go ahead, BC.
Would you say the boxing body attack, the intention of Omar Juarez kind of reminds you of a young El Diamante, Raul Marquez?
Yeah, maybe a little bit there. Maybe with fewer fouls.
I mean, Omar much better looking than the well-acclaimed trainer, broadcaster, ex-fighter in Raul Marquez, but that also, intentionality is just the same.
Yeah, and Juarez doing a really great job here in this round, and good angle change there, obviously, from Dulay to get out of it. But in general here, good lead outside foot positioning, because the right hand is so important for his offense and for Juarez. Obviously, having that lead outside foot positioning is critical.
Trio of left uppercuts from Juarez there inside. Final 10 seconds coming up in round 9. Left cross from Dulay in the closing seconds.
Again, I'm not watching this to judge it and score it. I'm just trying to pay attention to the action. I will say Dulay was doing a little bit of leading there, where he actually had Juarez on the outside orbiting him. We'll take a look at some of the replays here. This is just great work from Juarez, right? Pull 2 there. But nice uppercut there from Dulay as he anticipates Juarez just kind of walking in. When Juarez is setting up his shots, these uppercuts are just magic from Juarez. When he's setting up his work or putting punches in combination, he's definitely the better of the 2. When he gets a little lazy, Dulay makes him pay.
I mean, on a scale from 1 to 10, Luke, how lucky is young Omar Juarez that he's entering the final round here, round 10, after what could best be described as a disastrous start with 4 low blows and 3 point deductions in the first 4 rounds alone.
I'm trying to think. When was the last time you watched a fight and a guy had 3 points deducted and it went to full distance?
It was a bizarre set of circumstances. Many a referee might have ended this fight To be fair, Juarez was given one warning on the first low blow, and it was 3 straight point deductions after that, but still allowed to continue from referee Michael Ortega, and he's made the most of it. Consistent, aggressive action. Maybe an errant counter shot or two from Austin Dulay, but this has largely been Omar Juarez's night.
Yeah, if you watch the two, I mean, they're trading here. This is excellent back and forth between the two men. But I'm going to say that Dulay is the one who is consistently being pushed back, and I would also argue, just watch their feet. Who is a little bit more balanced and centered? It's Juarez. These are some nice shots from Dulay.
Dulay has just over 2 minutes left in this one to try to get dramatic, pull himself back into this fight. At least as our eyes have perceived it. There's a good left hand from Austin Dulay.
But BC, he doesn't necessarily put a lot behind it. He lands it and then stands there. I would love to see him land it, and that's better. And then to put more offense behind it. But that typically hasn't been his trademark so far.
Dulay sensing the urgency, but so is Juarez. Left hook to the body, right cross, pins his opponent on the ropes once more. A lot of fire in Omar Juarez. As soon as Austin Dulay has any type of success, you see the 23-year-old answer and come over the top with more.
He's actually able, interestingly, sorry to see,
that spite.
Dulay is actually able to get off the ropes now to Juarez's own left side by virtue of some openings he's creating there. That has given him a little bit of life in terms of not being trapped there. Good left hand from Dulay.
Final 10 seconds in this featured bout between super lightweights. Austin Dulay has found his urgency, letting his hands go to close.
BC, I gotta say, the last 2 rounds, Dulay might have got him, and he already had the 3-point deduction. I really have no idea how this one's going to go, to be honest with you.
They go the distance, 10 rounds complete. We can look back at the action, probably the best round of this bout in terms of two-way action between Juarez and Dulay. You love the urgency late from Austin Dulay, but the key question is, was it too little, too late? He got the benefit of the 3-point deductions in his favor after the series of early low blows from Omar Juarez, but who did the judges prefer for the majority of the action? Luke, to your point, if he, meaning Austin Dulay, was able to steal the last round, maybe round 9 before that, will he be able to pair that with the point deductions to make this more interesting on the scorecards than necessarily the action indicated?
Yeah, I gotta say, I thought overall, let's take out the point deductions and the low blows for just a second. Obviously, it's a big, critical way to understand the fight, but just for the moment, like, who was better for the majority of 10 rounds? Juarez was better for the majority of 10 rounds, but with the 3-point deductions and kind of not a very... He didn't close the fight with a huge push. In fact, I would actually say Dulay was the one who closed the fight, looking a little bit more in tune, looking a little bit more like he had found some openings. This one could very easily go Dulay's way. We'll have to see, but dicey.
The judges, 2 of them from the state of Nevada, Eric Cheek, Patricia Morse-Jarman, and another veteran judge, Max DeLuca from California, will have the final say as they tabulate the scores through 10 rounds. Let's hear from Miguel Flores once they've got this calibrated.
These scores are going to be so weird.
All you can do is shake your head at what we saw in this fight. To see a fighter like Omar Juarez, who owned so many of these rounds, but unable to control himself when it comes to throwing body shots near and around that belt line.
Also, credit to Dulay for the composure to deal with the low blows and then end the fight in a very strong manner. That speaks to his character as an athlete and competitor.
You heard it right there. The victory goes in the way of young Omar Juarez, the 23-year-old from Brownsville, Texas. We wondered if Austin Dulay could have pulled a little bit of a backdoor steal as tensions heating up inside the ring. Dulay needing to be held back by the commission and members of his team.
This is unfortunate that it ended this way, although you'd suppose that these kinds of things happen when that many decisive fouls are involved here. The corner's going after it, and obviously Dulay having to be held back there. Juarez as well. Juarez, to me, BC, the rightful winner. Unfortunate that the sportsmanship can't play a role here in the final moments of these two being in the ring together.
Omar Juarez will survive and advance despite the 4 low blows, the 3 points deducted, but he did the better work throughout. Juarez improving to 14-1 as a professional. Austin Dulay had his opportunity, had his opening to try to upset the apple cart here. Unable to do enough despite a strong finish there in the 10th round. Good to see that cooler heads ultimately prevailed in the end. But a decision win on the docket here for young Omar Juarez. Luke Thomas, that'll wrap up our pair of Showtime Championship Boxing countdown preliminary bouts, featured prelims, as now we look ahead to the top of the hour, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. in the West. From that same ring, the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, a triple header, and it all points back to that main event. Unbeaten lightweights, Michel Rivera, Frank Martin, both believe this risk was worth taking, considering what this could do to their careers, where they are, the confidence they have in their skills. One final time as we look at this matchup and break it down, something's going to have to ultimately separate these two. Your opinion, the tape study you've crunched, the stats you've looked at. What's ultimately the difference between what we do know and what we don't know about these two as they're set, get ready to touch gloves in less than a few hours?
Well, I don't know in terms of the way you worded the question, but I think that, again, one, like, you're trying to understand the differences experientially that both fighters have had, and then, of course, stylistically, how they differ. Again, one more time, it deserves to be noted, Rivera's more battle-tested. He just is. He has been in more difficult circumstances against guys with lots of experience, double-digit fights, actually 20 or more in certain cases, lots of KOs, big punchers, and has really found a way to neutralize them, or in cases where he's been hurt, to rally to win, and then usually in quick succession thereafter. He is very much a guy who has stared down the barrel of difficulty in ways that other opponents have not. And Frank Martin is obviously an incredible, dynamic talent, but he has not been put through that kind of a run through his boxing career, in part because he has just run over so many guys, right? But the other part is, too, like, he hasn't had as much difficulty in terms of matchups along the way, I think, relatively speaking. So that's a big part of it. I think the other one, too, BC, like, here's another thing to pay attention to. Like, the ability to tolerate punishment and maintain bearing. I feel like this is going to be a fight where there's just going to be a lot of punishment dished out between them. Both guys have pretty good volume, not crazy high volume. Pretty good is what I would say. But they can both find the ability to just really stick it to their opponent with their gifted abilities. And again, in the case of Frank Martin, dynamic punching power and really, really sharp body work. When it's round 8, when it's round 9, when it's round 10, or whatever the case later in the fight, who's going to have the physical durability to maintain that style? Who's going to have the physical durability to keep their mental composure and stay focused on whatever the game plan plus adjustments might be? Again, when you've been battle tested in the way that Rivera has, some of these answers have appeared. But just because Frank Martin hasn't necessarily been down that path doesn't mean he won't rise to the occasion here either. But I just want to see who can tolerate the punishment that the other one is going to deal without being massively derailed in what they're trying to do.
Yeah, just a quick pause before we continue looking ahead to tonight's main event, as we had some sound issues preventing us from hearing the scores. It goes down in our featured bout for Omar Juarez as a unanimous decision with scores of 96-91, 96-91, and 94-93 over Austin Dulay. So the 3-point deductions still allowed a comfortable cushion there for Omar Juarez. But Luke, you couldn't have said it better in terms of the stakes, the mindset, the contrast. I mean, the stare down between Michel Rivera and Frank Martin at Friday's weigh-in alone told you a lot about what both of them are bringing to this table and what this opportunity means. Neither willing to turn away, and their team having to separate them. And I think in particular, as we get a shot at this, both in tremendous shape, obviously, but look at that glare on young Frank Martin there on the right with the beard. It's not as if Michel Rivera backed down at all. This was an intense stare down, and this really represents to me exactly what this fight is about. We have all kinds of fights in boxing, crossroads fights between old and young, title fights, up-and-comers. This is the best kind of fight, in my opinion, because it's two hungry guys who have yet to fully prove it. They've passed the test they're supposed to. Beating Joseph Adorno, guys like that, was no joke for Michel Rivera. For Frank Martin, stepping up to the level he did, stopping Romero Duno, stopping Jackson Marinas. These are a very impressive step forward. But when you want to be a real championship contender in a division this loaded, 135, that has the names like Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia, Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, you're going to have to be extra special. And what better way to prove which one's coming and which one's going than to fight each other? Will that intensity we saw on the Friday stare down play into tonight's fight? Ultimately, I think it will, because this is not about bad blood or trash talk. This is about both believing they know the answer to a secret, and that secret is they're the future of this division, and this is their night to break out. When you get that setting, that incubator, if you will, you can get some special nights, some legendary nights breaking out, because this type of opportunity means so much to each fighter to truly make that statement, to have to raise their game to a level that they haven't had to show up to this point. Do you
both
like
of these? Sorry, BC, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to piggyback on your point, and I was going to say that, like, both of these guys feel like they're going to win the lottery tonight, right? Yeah. Both of these guys feel like they're going to win. No one else is going to win the lottery, but they think they're going to win the lottery, right? They both think, in the proverbial way in which Gen Z uses it, that they're him, right? They look in the mirror and they say, I'm him. And no matter how the fight goes through 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5, 6, however long it goes, neither guy is going to relent from that vision. Hell, even with a loss tonight, I don't think either guy would necessarily relent from that vision. But you have two junkyard dogs here in terms of self-confidence, in terms of belief. Neither knows how to lose here. Neither has had to face those circumstances. Both have done nothing through the course of their boxing career except deal. That's all they've ever done. They have dealt with opponents. They have stunted on them. That's what these guys are doing. And yes, this is a different circumstance tonight in either direction, but both feel like all of the momentum they've been riding up to this point is just going to continue. Of course, only one can win, so one person's narrative is not quite correct. We'll have to see who. But one more point I want to make here, too, about Frank Martin, and I think it's something that might be motivating him. Rivera is younger, and I feel like has been building in a way that is typically much more organic in terms of the timelines that we associate with prospects. He's 24, right? And he started much younger, and he's got a little bit more experience. But I feel like that has, in some ways, put Frank Martin's back against the wall and also motivated him, right? Both guys want the smoke, but Rivera wants the smoke because this is the next step in a much longer journey, right? It has culminated to this spot. I feel like Frank Martin is like, I don't have a lot of time on my side. Not that he's old, 27 years old, but as you indicated at the top of the show, we don't call a lot of prospects I should say we don't call a lot of 27-year-olds prospects, but we have to in this case. And I feel like, again, he's ranked 10th. I believe, again, one more time, Rivera's ranked 3rd. Frank Martin wants to take advantage of the time he has in this sport. He is 27 years old, undefeated, powerhouse. He wants to make a name with the time that he has. What better way than through Michel Rivera?
And to be fair, Frank Martin fights like that too. He's a skilled boxer, was a top amateur, has defensive skills, and certainly has shown them at times. But in his biggest fights, he's shown a willingness to welcome danger, to get inside, get under his opponent's jab under any means necessary, and show those type of daring, cutting of angles, letting his hands go, going hard to the body. There's no bigger target on your back than being in such a star-studded stable as he is in Dallas, under the training of Derek James, having Jermell Charlo, having Errol Spence on your left and right. He's also promoted by Errol Spence and Man Down Promotions. So that certainly puts a big target on you. But on the flip side, Michel Rivera puts Ali on his trunks and customizes his haircut to look like a young Cassius Clay in Miami in the mid-1960s. Talk about a statement in doing that you believe in where you've come from. A product of the Dominican Republic is Rivera, fights out of Miami. Certainly the better pure boxer between the two as we point this toward the X's and O's and what this fight ultimately looks like. If Rivera can control the terms of this fight and do what he does so well, work behind that jab, set up the right cross, which will be a big punch, especially as a counter option against a forward charging southpaw. When Michel Rivera has the keys to the car and it's his plan and it's his journey, he's able to take that fight the distance. He's able to outpoint, mitigate the damage. Control is really the key to him. How much do you think Frank Martin, on the flip side, needs to flip that script upside down? We know he can box, Luke Thomas. But Frank Martin has this plus side to him where he wants to make it a little bit more of a gritty fight. Does he need to get inside of that jab, or he simply can't win this when you look at Martin's prospects this evening?
Yeah, getting inside of the jab, I think, is going to be a real key part of it. And the two things you always want to pay attention to, this is true of any fight, and sometimes it matters more than others. Here's a case where I think it's going to matter quite greatly. The distance between the back of Rivera and the ropes. Right? Now, that's going to be very hard to do. If that jab is pumping, as you indicated, getting inside of it and all the head movement he's going to need to do, the faking, the feinting, the timing, he's going to have to show the great footwork. He is a guy, by the way, who, again, keeps his balance under him, Frank Martin, and uses his feet to get out of the way a lot. He doesn't do a ton of trunk movement. He does some, obviously, but he's really good about moving his feet, keeping his feet under him. That's going to be a key part. But over the course of time, as this fight goes along, if you see it being utterly dictated in the middle, I would say that's actually a bad sign for Frank Martin. Not in every case, in every fight against every opponent, but against this one, against Rivera. Rivera has to be backed up, in my mind. Now, backing a guy up isn't everything. You can still jab backing up. You can still do a lot of things. But what I mean to say is he has to be succumbing to the pressure of a guy like Frank Martin. Martin has to give Rivera no room to breathe, right? If he's got room to move, if he's got angles he can set, if he's the guy you're going to work behind, he's going to work behind his own jab. But what I mean to say is you're going to deal with my jab first, and then you're going to do whatever you're going to do later. That's just not a winning condition for Frank Martin. Martin needs to be in a space where Rivera is weathering the pressure, weathering, in certain cases, potentially storms that Frank Martin is bringing to him. If he is able to just really angle off and set and move, and he's got the freedom to go behind him. I'm not saying he's like Erislandy Lara or something like that in terms of how he can rotate on the outside, but I'm saying if you can corner his movement, you corner his options. And if you corner his options, he is still a very good fighter, but he becomes much easier to deal with. That guy in open space, that's a tough kid to beat, especially behind that jab. It's inside the jab, yes, and it's getting him off of his base, off of his balance, going backwards. He doesn't have to be up on the ropes doing this, but he can't just be roaming freely. If a guy like Rivera is roaming freely, Frank Martin's going to have a long night.
So many unanswered questions. What happens if this turns into an action fight? Does Rivera have that extra gear? Can Frank Martin develop a game plan that can make the adaptations in the moment and change against such a technician of Rivera? We'll find out tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, as a triple header kicks off in the final Showtime Championship Boxing card of this calendar year 2022. Before we provide our predictions, if you don't have Showtime, Hey, no problem. Why don't you head to Showtime.com right now? 30 days free. Check out tonight's triple header. The next 6 months, by the way, for new subscribers, $3.99 per month. If you've already seen the announcements, some of the teases for what's coming on the calendar in the near future, which we'll get to in a second, you're going to want to stay close to Showtime for all things combat sports, from championship boxing to Bellator MMA. So, Luke Thomas, this evening, unbeaten lightweights, 24-year-old Rivera, 27-year-old Martin. Somebody's it's a cliche. It's got to go out that window. Who has their hand raised? Who takes that step forward in the title rankings and gets a little bit closer to the likes of Tank Davis, Devin Haney, etc.?
This is a tough one. This is a really tough one. I think you could easily make a case for either guy. Not a BS case, like a good one. It's not hard to argue for Frank Martin and his abilities. It's not hard to argue for Michel Rivera and his abilities. In either direction, they're tremendous. But as we discussed on our podcast, Morning Combat, yesterday, BC, I think I'm going to go Frank Martin. Now, again, I don't say that super confidently, not because the kid's not talented, just because this matchup is bonkers. But I just like his firepower. I like his body punching, and I just like the way he not literally marches into guys, but over the course of a fight, he does a little bit of what Errol Spence does, where he digs into them and forces them a little bit backwards. It's trench warfare, with Errol Spence, where he claims the line, then pushes you, then claims the line, then pushes you. Frank Martin's got a little bit of that in him, too. And I wonder, against a guy like Rivera, who is the real deal Holyfield, not the exact version of it, but, he's got that kind of ability in him a little bit here. At least so far through the course of his career, he's shown real depth and ability. I don't know if he's faced someone, BC, I don't know what the word is, as mean as Frank Martin. Martin's
would it be
mean,
fair to say,
man.
Got that dog in him. Arf, arf.
Right? So Frank Martin's mean. So Frank Martin is the guy, technical, smart. Again, both sides, high fight IQ. This one's going to be excellent. Either guy can win. But I just think that ability to push into guys, get them going backwards, hardcore body punching, really excellent timing, and just being mean about it. Frank Martin, I think, is going to get his hand raised tonight.
Well, Frank Martin has no shortage of intention. There's no shortage of tease that there's something great under there that we haven't even tapped into yet. But if it's not everything that it's perceived to be, this will be a fight Michel Rivera will be able to control. It won't be easy, but if Frank Martin's not that guy at the end of the day, this is the type of opponent that Michel Rivera can do damage to. The problem in control and in score of victory. The problem is, like you, I echo that there's something under that hood in Frank Martin that does seem like it's trying to get out. And if he's able to close the distance, if he's able to go to the body, if he's able to slow Rivera down, he's got that kind of style. Look, I wouldn't compare his game, although they're both southpaws, to Spence, his promoter and stablemate. But like we mentioned earlier, there's some things that Martin does well at being compact, at sitting down on his shots, at throwing clean combinations and getting in and out. That could be havoc. That could be the type of kryptonite. I like Frank Martin as well. I can't wait to see. I'll slide his way. The odds are close. Frank Martin tonight, but we'll see what happens. 10 p.m. Eastern, top of the hour. Quickly, Luke, though, before we go, this Showtime boxing calendar has really started to fill up with announced fights, with rumored fights, with hopeful fights for the future when we're talking about Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia, which we could see on pay-per-view in April. But one of the first steps on the journey there is January 7th in your home city of Washington, D.C., when Showtime pay-per-view brings us a very interesting card with, oh, by the way, after recent announcements, a very deep undercard of big names too. But at the top of it, you talk about stars who can pack arenas and sell pay-per-views. Very few are on the level of Gervonta Tank Davis. But for people that don't know about his opponent, Hector Luis Garcia, who upset Chris Colbert, who took home a world title at 130 by beating Roger Gutierrez and is now moving up to lightweight for this one, boxing fans know this is not an easy night at the office for Tank.
No, not at all. In fact, I got the chance at this very presser where you can see Garcia wore the shades indoor. I got the chance to talk to Gervonta about this fight and like why he took it, because, the narrative around the fight is that it's a tune-up fight. But if it's a tune-up fight, the opponent should be, the difference between Tank and the opponent should be substantial. And again, Tank is a huge star in the sport, but most boxing insiders I've talked to have been like, this is actually a very difficult fight for Tank. And I actually asked Tank, why did you take a fight that is supposed to be a tune-up against this type of opponent, against a guy who was an Olympian, against a guy who, obviously, as we saw on Showtime Championship Boxing, gave Chris Colbert the business in a highly remarkable showing. And his answer was, like, which is it, guys? If I take opponents that people say aren't good enough, I get killed for it. And if I take this one, oh, it's the wrong fight because you want to see me take on Ryan Garcia. Like, his argument was, I want to take on tough fights. He thinks Ryan Garcia is probably one of the tougher fights. But he thinks that this Garcia, Hector Luis Garcia, is everything everyone says he is. And that's what Gervonta wants. He wants, actually, somebody, yes, who's coming up a little bit in weight, but wants someone that everyone else goes, ooh, that is a tough fight. He doesn't want people to say Tank takes this kind of a fight or that one. He wants people to know that when Tank Davis takes fights, they can respect the quality of the opposition. This is, in his mind, exactly what he wants to do, in keeping with all of his values. And so he took it. He just said, you know what? I want exactly what people say I don't do, and then they'll all shut up. Unfortunately for Gervonta, they won't. Even if he wins, they won't. But it is certainly a very commendable thing that he's trying to do. It's a very difficult contest. And I got to tell you, I favor Tank to win. I think the odds makers do as well. Dude, Garcia is not to be slept on at all. He will very much surprise a lot of people here.
Garcia, certainly as any opponent of Tank Davis, is going to have to show they can take the damage of one of the biggest, most dynamic punchers in this game. And from the standpoint of not just speed and placement, but pure power. But look, Garcia's crafty. He's a smart fighter. He can be aggressive in pockets when it makes sense. From the Dominican Republic, part of the larger sort of hot fire stable of trainer Bob Santos that's turning out, left and right fighters that we may have known their name, but they're starting. Carlos Adames, another name, who's just starting to have breakout portions of their career. That's what Hector Garcia did in 2022 with those two aforementioned wins. But in terms of why this fight is happening, I give Tank Davis a lot of credit because, he's heard how many people have looked back on his rise and say, okay, you didn't always fight who we wanted you to, or why'd you fight that guy? This is a big step forward for Tank Davis in a new calendar year. He's out from under the shadow of Mayweather Promotions and longtime promoter Floyd Mayweather, who from the very beginning put his arm around Gervonta and said, this is the next big thing. Now this is Tank Davis standing on his own from a promotional marketing standpoint and also matchmaking wise. So nothing easy about this setup, but it could be the last stop on the journey to providing in April one of the most spectacular fights on paper you could produce in the sport. And really, to be fair, like Michel Rivera and Frank Martin this evening, two young unbeaten guys who have chose to fight each other now in their early physical primes, with a lot at stake. 2023 offering us a lot when you talk about potential big fights we could see. January 7th, that first stop. How about on that undercard? Look, Demetrius Andrade is under the PBC banner now. He'll be in a big fight. But in that co-main event, Jaron Boots Ennis, Luke, it's not enough to say the future of the welterweight division. You really have to go the next step and say we might be looking at the future of boxing, the future pound-for-pound king. This unbeaten welterweight couldn't get the big names he wanted. He wants Spence, he wants Crawford, he wants Thurman, he wants everybody. But he's going to be in there for the interim WBA welterweight title. And he's trying to do it the old-fashioned way, becoming the mandatories for the big names who won't want to fight him. He's got Karen Chikadze in front of him, who's a battle-tested fighter, may not be as well known in the States as Boots. But Luke Thomas, you have spoken to this as well as anybody on Boots Ennis' rise. We just don't see young talents this dynamic look this complete this early in their rise at age 24. He's one of those guys where I'm really not sure if we are watching the best fighter in the world right now. We just don't know it yet. That's actually in play when you're talking about somebody like Jaron Ennis.
I don't think that's hyperbole at all. I mean, it's not settled. We don't really know who that is, and or whether he fits into that picture. We'll have to see. But is thinking about him in line with those kinds of lofty talk? Is that fair? I think it's very fair. Jaron Ennis can do everything, right? He can box orthodox, southpaw. He can box, he can punch, he can move. He's got great athleticism. He can make adjustments between rounds like very few fighters can. He's smart. He's young. He doesn't take a lot of damage. Listen, here's the reality. nobody wants to fight Boots Ennis. I mean, nobody. They don't want any piece of him because his profile hasn't blown up yet, but his ability is already some of the best we have in all of boxing, independent of weight class. Who wants to fight that guy? The answer is nobody. They don't want any piece of him now. They probably won't want a piece of him later. He's going to have to get mandatories eventually, right, in some kind of way to get opponents who sign up for this, unless his star blows up, in which case, the game changes altogether there when that happens. But right now, this is the future of boxing. I have called this guy a genius before. I will not change my words. I think he is. If you have not seen Boots Ennis, you are in for a treat. I should say, though, I should qualify that as long as the fight lasts, which probably it won't last very long.
And if you have not seen our digital program under the Showtime banner, the award-winning Morning Combat, your source for all things boxing and mixed martial arts, news, previews, reactions, and all that. Luke's got the sit-down with Gervonta Davis after that press conference. I've got a chat with Boots Ennis himself ahead of this fight, so check that out, youtube.com/Morning Combat for more. Part of the larger boxing audio offering from Showtime when you're talking about Showtime Boxing Podcast with Raskin and Mulv, The Last Stand with Brian Custer. Good stuff right there. Quickly to close, though, Luke, the quality of the boxing calendar for Showtime in January continues to January 28th in Las Vegas on Showtime proper when Jermell Charlo puts all 4 junior middleweight world titles and the Undisputed Championship there on the line against unbeaten Tim Tszyu, the son of the Hall of Famer, and we now have word that Costa Tszyu, his father, will be in attendance for this one. You talk about as good as it gets for this division. How about just the styles and the way they contrast? We are going to see fireworks January 28th.
Oh, this is going to be a fun one. Jermell Charlo, obviously the undisputed champion in the weight class. Tim Tszyu, obviously making his debut on Showtime previously and now moving into this position. He's going to come forward. By the way, having a little bit of a rough start early in his Showtime debut, but then down the stretch, really showing everyone what time it was. He's going to get in Jermell Charlo's face, make zero mistake about that. The question is he going to have enough? Is he going to be slick enough? Is he going to be good enough down the stretch to beat the guy who's got all the belts, the guy who has collected? He's got the Infinity Gauntlet. He's the Thanos of that division, and we're going to see what Tim Tszyu's got. But I will say, so far it has been remarkable to watch Tim Tszyu's journey, and what he showed stateside here at his Showtime debut gave me a lot of hope for what a showdown with Charlo might look like, and now we're just weeks away. Cannot wait to see that one.
Yeah, that fight was earlier this year at one of my favorite venues, the Armory in Minneapolis, when Tim Tszyu took on the battle-tested Terrell Gaucher, and they got into it throughout. I mean, look, Tim Tszyu is a quality young fighter on the rise from Australia. Not the same exact fighter skills, game plan-wise, as his father, but the one thing we've known about Tim Tszyu as he continues to step up in class, he'll welcome the damage. He'll walk you down, as you mentioned. He'll get inside on you. Look, there's no better one-punch counter-puncher in this game than Jermell Charlo with that big right hand, or going to the body like he did when he stopped Jason Rosario, the former unified champion, in their pay-per-view outing a couple of years back. Jermell Charlo's fresh off the biggest win of his career when he stopped Brian Castano to become the undisputed champion after they had that disputed draw on their first offering. This is going to be high-voltage, explosive stuff and so much at stake in this new era where we're seeing the 4-belt undisputed champions bounce around left and right, new ones all the time. It's a great time to be alive in boxing. We just saw the pound-for-pound king Naoya Inoue become the undisputed champion at bantamweight. And oh, by the way, could he be moving up to 122 soon to face some of those big names that we love, like Stephen Fulton Jr.? A lot to think about as the calendar turns. But one more card in front of you this evening to close out the year at the Cosmo in Las Vegas. Top of the hour, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. It's Michel Rivera and Frank Martin headlining a Showtime Championship Boxing tripleheader. Final reminder, you can check Luke Thomas and myself, Brian Campbell, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. It's Morning Combat. All you need in combat, from MMA, boxing, bare knuckle, grappling, whatever you got. We'll be there. We'll be breaking it down on the road at the big events, interviews with the top names. Check us out. Luke Thomas, it's been fun. We had some good preliminary action, a couple low blows, okay? A little bit of weirdness tonight in the ring and the Cosmo, but should be a fun triple header this evening. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, not much like our show. Plenty of low blows, but it rolled on and it met its conclusion in the end. I look forward to watching tonight's card.
Final plug, get your 30 days of Showtime right now for free at Showtime.com. The next 6 months are $3.99 after that for new subscribers. You can't beat that with a bat. Hammer can't touch that. No more 90s jokes left unturned. That's Luke Thomas. I'm Brian Campbell. This has been Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown. The preliminary action is behind us. Top of the hour. Fight night is here. Enjoy.
This is the one place I thought I'd never run into you. Who'd you piss off this time?
Another admiral.
You will have 3 weeks to teach them how to fight as a team
And how to come home.
Whoa! Those are your pilots.
Smoke in the air! Smoke in the air! You know what happens if you go through with this.
I know what happens to everyone if I don't.
Come on!
Top Gun Maverick, rated PG-13, streaming December 22nd on Paramount+.
4 straight sellouts. 3 division championships.
Lethal left uppercut!
The one and only Gervonta Tank Davis puts his perfect record on the line against one of the fastest rising boxers in the sport. Unbeaten Hector Luis Garcia, plus knockout artist Jaron Boots Ennis. Tank Davis versus Hector Luis Garcia, Saturday, January 7th, live on pay-per-view.
Welcome to Las Vegas, the fight capital of the world. We're going to start things off with Vincent Astrolabio taking on Nikolai Potapov.
I'm going to make the most of this opportunity and show everybody that I'm one of the best bantamweights in the world.
I have to do this for my country. Knockout.
We get to the co-main, José Uzcátegui taking on the unbeaten Vladimir Shishkin.
I came here to do my work. Everything is on the line, and that's why it's everything or nothing.
I'm ready for 12 rounds, but
don't think it will be 12. And this dynamite main event has major implications.
You got 2 undefeated fighters that's, super hungry.
For me, it's the best matchup of the year.
Michel Rivera, the reincarnation of Muhammad Ali, as he calls himself.
He's a good guy, strong guy. I know that he's confident, but I'm more confident.
Frank Martin, the GOAT.
I know I'm going to come out with the W because all of the overtime I put in. I just can't wait to get in there and just dominate.
Saturday, everybody will see new superstar in the ring.
Slippers count, so protect yourself at all times.
I will win this fight, definitely.
At this time, we're ready to bring our fighters to the stage. Frank the Ghost Martin, 134 3/4 pounds. And now his opponent, Michel Rivera, 134.5 pounds.
We're going to see who hit the hardest.
I will win this fight.